I was holding proof that my mother was a millionaire when I heard her car pull into the driveway. My hands were shaking. The investment documents were spread across her bedroom floor: contracts, bank statements, stock certificates. All of it showing one thing: Patricia Bennett owned 20% of Quantum Digital Solutions, the same tech company that had just hired me for $75,000 a year. The same mother who demanded half my salary 3 days ago. The same woman who'd spent my dead father's money without telling me. I had maybe 60 seconds before she walked through that door. Let me back up. 5 days earlier, I'd come home from Boston with the best news of my life. My first real career job. Benefits. Salary. A future that didn't involve serving coffee to people who couldn't be bothered to learn my name. I'd expected my mom to be proud. Maybe even hug me. Instead, she looked at me from the couch, her permanent spot in our New Hampshire living room, and said 4 words that changed everything. "You owe me half." I laughed. I actually laughed, because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. $75,000 a year, Natalie? Patricia leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. That's good money. Real money. And since you're still living under my roof, eating my food, I think it's only fair you contribute. 50%. Every month. My smile died. Mom, I can help with groceries and bills, but half my paycheck? That's what you owe me for raising you alone. Her voice was flat. Cold. Your father died 7 years ago. I've been holding this household together by myself while you were off at college living however you wanted. Now it's time you showed some gratitude. Living however I wanted? I'd worked 2 jobs through school. I graduated with honors because I had no time for anything else. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I tried reasoning with her. Offered to pay rent, utilities, whatever made sense. She refused everything except her original demand. Then she dropped the bomb. Besides, it's not like that college fund is helping you anymore. My chest tightened. What? The money your father left for your education? She shrugged. I spent it. Years ago. On things that needed handling. The floor felt like it disappeared beneath me. You spent my college fund? It was family money, Natalie. I used it for family reasons. She stood up, grabbed the remote, and turned the TV volume higher. You survived just fine without it, didn't you? So stop acting like you're the victim here. That conversation ended with her walking to her bedroom and closing the door. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, feeling like my entire childhood had been rewritten in 30 seconds. But that was 5 days ago. Now, sitting on her bedroom floor with documents proving she'd turned my inheritance into millions, I finally understood. This wasn't about rent money. This wasn't even about gratitude. This was about control. And she had no idea I'd just found out the truth. I heard her keys jingle at the front door. I shoved the papers back into the folder, crammed it into the drawer, and slipped out of her room just as the door downstairs opened. Natalie, she called out. You home? I walked to the top of the stairs, forcing my voice to sound normal. Yeah. Just finishing some work. She looked up at me, studying my face for a second too long. Then she smiled. Good. We need to talk about your first paycheck. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying what I'd found. The investment contract. The bank withdrawal from 2018, $180,000, taken 2 months after my father's funeral. The current valuation making her stake worth over $2 million. She had millions. And she wanted half my paycheck. Why? I grabbed my laptop and started digging. If Patricia had invested in Quantum Digital Solutions back in 2019, There had to be records. News articles. Something. I found the company's founding story first. 3 tech entrepreneurs launched it in early 2019 with angel investor funding. The company built cloud infrastructure software for healthcare systems. Within 3 years, they'd landed contracts with 6 major hospital networks. Then I found the investor list from their series of funding round. Patricia Bennett wasn't on it. I scrolled further. Series B, Series C. Nothing. Her investment wasn't public. Which meant it happened before the company went official. She was an early, private investor, the kind that gets in on the ground floor with serious money and even more serious returns. How did she even know about this opportunity? My mom barely understood how to use email. I was about to close my laptop when I noticed something in my company's employee handbook. There was a section on investor relations and disclosure policies. Employees were required to report any conflicts of interest, including family relationships with investors or board members. My stomach dropped. I hadn't reported anything because I didn't know. But if anyone found out my mother owned 20% of the company, and I hadn't disclosed it, I could lose my job before I even started. The next evening, I came home early from meeting a friend. I was heading to my room when I heard my mom's voice coming from behind her closed bedroom door. She was on the phone. Her tone was different, urgent, almost panicked. I stopped in the hallway. She doesn't know yet, Patricia was saying. We can't let her find out what's hidden. Not now. It's too early. My heart started pounding. I know the terms, she continued. 2 more years. But if she starts asking questions before then? A pause. No. I'll handle it. I just need to keep her focused on something else. Silence. The salary demand is working. She's distracted. Angry at me instead of curious. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. Trust me, my mom said, her voice dropping lower. Natalie has no idea what her father actually left behind. And she won't. Not until I say so. The call ended. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind racing. What her father actually left behind. This wasn't just about the investment. There was something else. Something bigger she was hiding. And whatever it was, she was using my anger over the salary demand as a distraction to keep me from finding it. I walked to my room, closed the door, and made a decision. If she wanted to play games, fine. But I was done being the one left in the dark. I waited 3 days before making my move. 3 days of pretending everything was normal. 3 days of nodding along while Patricia talked about our arrangement like it was already decided. 3 days of biting my tongue every time she mentioned how much I owed her. But the whole time, I was planning. I needed to find whatever she was hiding. And I needed to do it without her knowing I was looking. My opportunity came on Saturday morning. Patricia left for her weekly hair appointment, one of the few times she actually left the house. She'd be gone for at least 2 hours. The second her car disappeared down the street, I went back to her bedroom. This time, I wasn't just looking at the investment documents. I was searching for what she'd mentioned on that phone call. What my father actually left behind. I pulled out the bottom drawer of her nightstand again, removed the folder I'd found before, and felt around the space behind it. My fingers hit something solid. I pulled harder. Another folder slid out. This one was thicker, held together with a rubber band. I opened it. The first document was a will. My father's will. I'd never seen it before. After he died, my mom told me everything had been handled by lawyers, that it was all too complicated for me to worry about at 16. I started reading. Most of it was standard. The house went to Patricia, their joint accounts were transferred to her name, personal belongings divided between us. Then I reached page 4. Investment portfolio, to be held in trust for Natalie Marie Bennett until age 25, at which point all assets transfer to her name with full control. Trustee, Patricia R. Bennett. Current estimated value, $180,000. I read it again. The money wasn't supposed to be Patricia's. It was supposed to be held for me. In trust. She was supposed to protect it, not spend it. But she'd taken it anyway. Used it to invest in quantum digital solutions. Put it in her own name. That was theft. Wasn't it? I kept reading. There was a second clause, handwritten at the bottom of the page. My father's signature was next to it, along with a lawyer's stamp. In the event Patricia R. Bennett misuses trust funds or acts against Natalie's best interests, all assets, including primary residence and investment returns, shall immediately transfer to Natalie's control upon discovery. My hands started shaking. If I could prove she'd violated the trust, everything became mine. Not just the investment. The house. Everything. But there was a problem. The will was dated 3 weeks before my father died. That handwritten clause looked recent, different ink, cleaner handwriting. Almost like someone had added it later. Had my father suspected something? Had he known Patricia couldn't be trusted? Or had someone else altered this document? I heard a car door slam outside. No. She wasn't supposed to be back yet. I shoved everything back into the drawer and ran to my room, my heart hammering in my chest. Footsteps on the stairs. Her bedroom door opening. Then silence. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, wondering if she'd noticed anything out of place. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, "Come downstairs. Now." She knew. I walked down the stairs slowly, trying to control my breathing. Patricia was standing in the living room, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "Sit down, Natalie. We need to talk." I sat. She didn't. "I know what you've been doing," she said quietly. "And I think it's time I told you the truth." I waited for her to yell. To accuse me of snooping. To kick me out. Instead, Patricia sat down across from me, her expression softer than I'd seen in years. "I'm not angry," she said. "I knew you'd find out eventually. I was just hoping it wouldn't be this soon." My throat was tight. "Find out what?" "That I've been testing you." I stared at her. "Testing me?" She nodded. "Everything. The salary demand. The college fund. All of it." She leaned forward. "Natalie, your father and I built that investment together. Before he died, we both put money into quantum digital solutions. It was a risk, but we believed in it. That wasn't what the documents showed." But I didn't interrupt. "When he passed, I had a choice. I could have told you everything, handed you the money, let you do whatever you wanted with it. Or I could protect it. Grow it. Make sure that when you were ready, truly ready, you'd have something real. By lying to me for 7 years? By making sure you could handle success." Her voice was calm, controlled. "Most people your age get money and waste it. They don't understand sacrifice. They don't know how to protect what they have." She paused. "I needed to see if you were different. So demanding half my paycheck was, what? A character test?" "Exactly." She smiled, like she was proud. "And you passed. You didn't just hand it over. You questioned it. You stood your ground. That tells me you're ready." I felt like I was losing my mind. Ready for what? To take over. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with a folder. Different from the ones I'd found. In 2 years, when you turn 25, the investment transfers to your name. That's what your father wanted. But I wanted to make sure you'd be strong enough to handle it. That you wouldn't let people manipulate you. She handed me the folder. Inside were updated documents. The investment was now worth $2.6 million. And according to the paperwork, it would all become mine on my 25th birthday. You own 20% of your own company, Natalie. You just don't know it yet. I looked at her, this woman who'd tortured me for days, who'd lied about spending my college fund, who'd made me feel guilty for succeeding. Why didn't you just tell me? Because trust fund kids don't survive in the real world. They don't fight. They don't earn respect. She sat back down. I needed you to build your own life first. To prove you could make it without the money. And you did. It almost made sense. Almost. But something still felt wrong. What about the college fund? You said you spent it. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. I moved it. Into the investment. It's all there, Natalie. Every penny your father left you. I never spent a dime. She was lying. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. The way her eyes shifted. The way her voice changed. Something about this story wasn't true. And I was going to find out what. I didn't trust her explanation. Not for a second. So Monday morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I started digging into quantum digital solutions from the inside. My position was junior level, but I had access to the company's internal database. Employee records, investor information, board meeting notes, most of it was restricted, but some files were open to anyone with a company login. I started with the founding documents. Quantum Digital Solutions was incorporated in February 2019. 3 co-founders, Marcus Chen, Priya Kapoor, and David Osman. Initial funding came from a mix of angel investors and personal savings. I searched for Patricia's name in every document I could find. Nothing. No mention of her investment. No record of her ownership stake. Not even a reference to an outside investor matching her timeline. That didn't make sense. If she owned 20% of the company, there should be paperwork. Shareholder agreements. Board minutes. Unless her investment was structured differently. Off the books. Private. I opened the employee portal and navigated to the shareholder section. It listed the current ownership breakdown. Marcus Chen, 28%, Priya Kapoor, 28%, David Osman, 28% other investors, 16%. That added up to 100%. Where was Patricia's 20%? I checked the date on the shareholder report. Updated last month. Either the documents I found in her drawer were fake, or something had changed between 2019 and now. I needed to talk to someone who'd been here from the beginning. That afternoon, I asked around and found out Marcus Chen still worked in the building. He was the chief technology officer now, but apparently, he was approachable. I caught him in the break room. Mr. Chen? Sorry to bother you. I'm Natalie Bennett, new hire in operations. He looked up from his coffee. Marcus is fine. What can I do for you? I hesitated. How much should I say? I'm trying to learn more about the company's history. For a project I'm working on. Do you remember who the early investors were? Before the Series A round? He thought for a moment. A few angel investors. Some friends and family. Why? Did you ever work with someone named Patricia Bennett? His expression shifted. Just slightly. Bennett? He repeated the name slowly. That name sounds familiar. Not as an investor, though. My heart skipped. Then how? He set his coffee down. There was a Richard Bennett. One of our original investors. Great guy. Believed in us when nobody else did. He paused. He passed away, though. Back in 2018, I think. Before we officially launched. Richard Bennett. My father. Wait, I said carefully. My father invested in this company? Marcus's eyes widened. Richard was your father? Everything I thought I knew just shattered. Marcus led me to his office without another word. He closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. My legs felt weak, so I didn't argue. I had no idea Richard had a daughter working here, he said, settling into his chair. When did you start? 2 weeks ago. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I didn't know my father had any connection to this company. My mom never mentioned it. Marcus's face softened. Your father was one of the first people to believe in what we were building. Back in 2018, we were just 3 tech guys with an idea and no funding. He gave us $180,000 when nobody else would take the risk. $180,000. The exact amount from the bank withdrawal I'd seen. He didn't just give us money, Marcus continued. He gave us advice. Introduced us to contacts. Treated us like family. He paused. When he died, it hit us hard. We weren't even officially launched yet. What happened to his investment after he passed? Marcus leaned back in his chair. His wife, your mother, I assume, took over. She had legal authority as his spouse. We offered to buy her out, give her the initial investment back plus some interest, but she refused. Said Richard would have wanted his stake to stay in the company. That didn't match what Patricia had told me. She'd made it sound like she was the investor. Like she'd made the decision. Did you ever meet with her? My mom, I mean. Patricia. Once. Maybe 6 months after your father died. She came to the office, reviewed the paperwork, signed some documents transferring Richard's shares into her name. He frowned. She seemed. I don't know. Distant. Like she didn't really care about the company, just wanted the formalities handled. And the shares? They're still in her name? Marcus nodded. As far as I know. 20% ownership. Though we haven't heard from her in years. She doesn't come to shareholder meetings, doesn't vote on company decisions. We send her quarterly reports, but she never responds. 20%. So that part was true. But it wasn't her investment. It was my father's. Marcus, I need to ask you something. I chose my words carefully. In my father's original investment agreement, was there any mention of conditions? Like what would happen to the shares after a certain amount of time? His expression changed. Why do you ask? I found some documents at home. They mentioned the shares transferring to me when I turned 25. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, went to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a folder. Your father was very specific about his wishes, he said, handing me a document. He wanted to make sure that if anything happened to him, his investment would eventually go to you. Not immediately, he didn't want you to inherit money before you were ready to handle it. But he set up terms. I read the document. It was an amendment to the original shareholder agreement, dated 1 week before my father died. Upon Natalie Bennett reaching age 25, all shares currently held by Patricia R. Bennett shall transfer to Natalie Bennett, provided she is actively employed and financially independent. Actively employed and financially independent. That's why Patricia had been so interested in my new job. That's why she'd been testing me. Not to see if I was strong enough to handle success. To see if I qualified to take her shares away. There's something else you should know, Marcus said quietly. Your father made one other request. He asked that when you turn 23, We extend you a job offer if you were qualified. The room went still. What? He didn't want us to just give you a position. You had to earn it on your own merit. But he asked us to watch for your application. Marcus met my eyes. When your resume came across my desk 3 months ago, I recognized your last name. I pulled your father's file and saw his request. You were qualified, honestly, you were one of our top candidates anyway. So we made the offer. My job. The one thing I thought I'd earned entirely on my own. My father had arranged it from beyond the grave. I left Marcus's office feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Everything in my life, my job, my inheritance, even my mother's behavior, had been orchestrated by my father before he died. And Patricia knew. She'd known the entire time. That night, I sat in my room and made a list of everything I'd learned. My father invested $180,000 in quantum digital solutions. The investment is now worth over $2.60 million. Patricia controls it until I turn 25. The shares transfer to me automatically if I'm employed and independent. My father arranged for the company to offer me a job. But there was still one thing that didn't make sense. If the shares were automatically transferring to me in 2 years, why was Patricia demanding half my salary? Why go through this whole test routine? Unless she was trying to prove I wasn't financially independent. If I was giving her half my paycheck every month, was I really independent? Or was I dependent on her approval, her permission, her terms? Maybe she was building a case to challenge the transfer. To argue I wasn't ready. That I still needed her. I needed proof of her real intentions. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, an estate attorney who specialized in trust disputes. I explained the situation carefully, leaving out names and details that might identify anyone. Hypothetically, I said, if someone is managing a trust and they're demanding money from the beneficiary, could that be considered a conflict of interest? The lawyer was quiet for a moment. It depends on the terms of the trust. But generally, a trustee has a fiduciary duty to act in the beneficiary's best interest. If they're using their position to extract money for personal gain, that could be grounds for removal. And if the beneficiary wanted to challenge the arrangement, they'd need documentation. Proof that the trustee violated their duties. Bank records, communications, anything showing misuse of authority. I thanked her and hung up. I needed evidence. Real evidence that Patricia was manipulating the situation. That afternoon, I went back to Patricia with a new strategy. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her. About the investment. About proving I'm ready. She looked up from the couch, interested. And? You're right. I want to learn. I want to understand how you built this. I forced myself to smile. Maybe we could work together. You could teach me about investing, about protecting wealth. Make it a real partnership. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She was trying to read me. A partnership? Yeah. You help me understand the business side, and I'll prove I can handle the responsibility. I paused. We could even formalize it. Set up a shared account for the salary contributions. Make it official. She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea, Natalie. Very mature. She had no idea I was recording every word. Or that I'd already scheduled a meeting with a lawyer for next week. If she wanted to play games, I'd play. But I was playing to win. 2 weeks later, I walked into Quantum Digital Solutions with a lawyer's letter in my bag and a plan I'd rehearsed 100 times. Patricia thought we were partners now. She'd been almost pleasant lately, talking about our future and building wealth together. She'd even set up that joint account like I'd suggested. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Every demand for money. Every contradictory statement. Every piece of evidence showing she'd violated the trust terms my father had set up. And today, I was going to use it. I'd requested a meeting with the board of directors. Officially, I told them I needed to disclose a potential conflict of interest, my mother's ownership stake in the company. They'd agreed immediately, probably worried about legal liability. What they didn't know was that I had more than a disclosure prepared. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Marcus was there, along with Priya and David. 2 other board members I didn't recognize sat at the far end of the table. Thanks for meeting with me, I started, keeping my voice steady. I recently discovered that my mother, Patricia Bennett, holds a 20% ownership stake in this company. I wanted to disclose this relationship formally. Marcus nodded. We appreciate your transparency, Natalie. We'll make a note in your file. There's more. I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. I've also discovered that these shares originally belonged to my father, Richard Bennett, and were supposed to be held in trust for me until age 25. The room went quiet. I've reviewed the original shareholder agreement, I continued, and according to the terms my father set up, the shares should transfer to me automatically in 2 years, provided I'm employed and financially independent. Priya leaned forward. We're aware of those terms, Natalie. They're part of the company records. Then you should also be aware that my mother has been demanding 50% of my salary as a condition of me living at home. She's been using her position as trustee to extract money from me while controlling assets that are legally meant to be mine. I slid copies of my documentation across the table. Bank records showing the joint account she'd insisted on. Text messages where she demanded payment. The recording of our conversation where she'd admitted to testing me. She's been systematically trying to prevent me from meeting the independence requirement, I said. Which means she's violating her fiduciary duty as trustee. David picked up one of the documents, scanning it quickly. This is concerning. According to the estate attorney I consulted, I continued, when a trustee acts against the beneficiary's interests, the terms of the trust can be challenged, including the timeline for asset transfer. Marcus looked at me carefully. What are you asking for, Natalie? This was it. The moment I'd been building toward. I'm asking the board to recognize that my mother has violated the trust terms. And I'm requesting that the shares be transferred to my name immediately, rather than waiting until I'm 25. The room went silent. Do you have legal standing to make this request? One of the other board members asked. I pulled out the final document. A petition I'd filed with the probate court that morning, challenging Patricia's control of the trust. As of 9 a.m. today, yes. I do. Priya and Marcus exchanged glances. We'll need to consult with our legal team, Marcus said slowly. This is unprecedented. I understand. But there's one more thing you should know. I took a breath. My father's original investment agreement included a clause stating that if the trustee is found to have misused their authority, all company shares, plus any property purchased with trust funds, transfer immediately to the beneficiary. I watched their faces as they processed what that meant. Patricia didn't just control my inheritance. She'd used it to buy our house. Her car. Everything. And if I won this case, all of it became mine. I'm not trying to cause problems, I said quietly. I just want what my father intended for me to have. Marcus nodded slowly. We'll review everything and get back to you within 48 hours. I stood up, shook hands with everyone at the table, and walked out. My phone buzzed before I even reached the elevator. Patricia, we need to talk. Come home. Now. She'd found out. Patricia was waiting for me in the living room when I got home. She wasn't sitting on the couch like usual. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the street. You went to the board, she said without turning around. Yes. filed a legal petition. Accused me of violating the trust. Yes. She finally turned to face me. Her eyes were red. I'd never seen her cry before. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done. I'm taking back what Dad left for me. She laughed, but it sounded broken. Your father. God, Natalie, you think you knew him? You think he was some saint who planned everything perfectly? He cared enough to protect my future. That's more than I can say for you. He was protecting you from me. The words came out like a confession. That's what the trust was really about. He knew I had a problem. I froze. What problem? Patricia walked to the couch and sat down heavily. Gambling. I had a gambling debt, Natalie. $70,000 that I owed to people who don't negotiate payment plans. The room felt like it was tilting. Your father found out 3 months before he died. We fought about it constantly. He threatened to leave me, to take you away. So we made a deal. She looked up at me. He'd pay off my debt, invest the rest of his savings in that startup, but only if I agreed to strict terms. The money would be held in trust for you. I couldn't touch it except to manage the investment. And when you turned 25, it all went to you. So you've been managing it properly? Is that what you're saying? I've been clean for 6 years, Natalie. 6 years without placing a single bet. That investment? I grew it. I turned 180,000 into 2.6 million because I worked my ass off learning how to do this right. Her voice cracked. But the terms your father set up, they weren't just about protecting you. They were about punishing me. Making sure I knew that even from the grave, he didn't trust me with our family's future. I didn't know what to say. The salary demands, the tests, I know how it looked. But I wasn't trying to steal from you. I was trying to prove to myself that I could be the mother your father never believed I could be. That I could prepare you for this without screwing it up. She wiped her eyes. I wanted you to be strong enough that when you found out the truth about me, you wouldn't fall apart like I did. I sat down across from her, my anger mixing with something I didn't want to feel. Sympathy. Why didn't you just tell me? Because addicts don't get second chances in people's minds, Natalie. Once they know, that's all they see. I didn't want you looking at me the way your father did in those last months. Like I was broken. She stood up. The house, the car, I bought them with money I earned managing the investment. Not trust funds. I kept every penny separate. Your lawyer can verify that. She walked toward the stairs, then stopped. You'll get your shares. You've earned them. But I hope someday you'll understand that I was trying to give you something your father never gave me. What's that? A chance to prove yourself before judgment was already written. 3 months later, the shares transferred to my name. The probate court reviewed everything, Patricia's financial records, the investment history, the trust documentation. They found no evidence of misuse. Every dollar was accounted for. The house and car were purchased with legitimate management fees she'd earned. Technically, I'd won. I owned $2.8 million in company stock. I had full control of my inheritance. Patricia had moved into a small apartment across town, and we barely spoke anymore. But victory felt nothing like I'd imagined. I kept thinking about what she'd said. About addiction. About my father's lack of trust. About spending 6 years trying to prove she was more than her worst mistake. Was she a villain? Or just someone who'd been desperate and made terrible choices? I didn't have an answer. What I did know was this: my father had protected me, but he'd also set up a system that guaranteed Patricia and I would eventually clash. Maybe he thought that was necessary. Maybe he was right. But it cost us any chance of a real relationship. Last week, Patricia texted me. Just one line, the Q3 shareholder report looks strong. Your father would be proud. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before responding. Thanks for growing it into something worth having. She never replied. I still work at Quantum Digital Solutions. I'm good at my job, I know that now, independent of my father's arrangements. Marcus promoted me last month. Not because of my shares, but because I earned it. The money sits in investment accounts I barely look at. It's there. It's mine. But it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like inheritance always does, heavy with the weight of people who aren't here anymore and the complicated truth about the ones who are. People ask if I regret confronting Patricia. If I wish I'd handled things differently. I tell them no. But late at night, when I'm alone in the apartment I rent with my own salary, I wonder if my father's real gift wasn't the money. Maybe it was the lesson that winning doesn't always feel like victory. And sometimes the truth costs more than lies ever did. Some people will say I was right to fight for what was mine. Others will say I destroyed my family over money. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done?